Hello and welcome to Tony's Bonsai. I've got two really interesting trees to work on today. I've got this eastern hemlock and I've got this cornus sanguinea midwinter fire. So let's start with this one. During the autumn and winter, British garden centres are full of this plant, and these branches that are a kind of reddish colour now go a gorgeous, almost fluorescent orange colour, which is amazing. So they are grown for the winter shape. And my thinking is that by growing this for its winter image, potentially, it could be just a wonderful tree. You can see here the wire that I applied to the main structure of the tree. It was very stiff, very brittle branches. I thought I might maybe kill or damage one or two of them, but it's pulled through really well this spring, and it's now time to get the wire off. The wire's now off, and I've noticed the ends of some of these branches have kind of died, a bit like maples. They're brittle and dead. So I'm going to go around and just cut those off. Considering a lot of my shrub type trees didn't make it through the winter, I'm really happy that this one seems to have done okay and it's come on well in the spring, because this is one of the ones that I'm quite excited about. I've never really seen it as grown as bonsai, but I'm sure it has been. It's got these lovely flowers on it. I'm not sure how these will develop or whether I should remove them or not. When a tree's in early development as this is, we often kind of remove flowers to allow the growth to go into the plant, but I'm not sure if that's something that I should do with this. If anybody has any experience with either this particular variety or even just the same might apply to a common dogwood, could you let me know in the comments and advise me, because it'd be quite easy for me to go around and just nip these off. With me growing this tree for the winter image, obviously I didn't want any heavy wire marking. You can see in here there's some very light marks, but they're not really proud, and I'm sure they'll disappear. This is a darker one, but again, it's barely gone into the bark. So I'm pretty sure, given a year or two, they'll just disappear. And it probably would have been ideal to get the wire off maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, but I'm fairly happy with the way that the branches have held their position and the lack of marks. This view here is something like the front at the moment as I see it in the future. I only made one major chop in the winter before I wired this, and it was round here. I took a fairly large branch off, and that's healing over nicely. At this stage now, I'm happy to leave it. I'll see what people say regarding moving the flowers, and I think I'll come back and start some pruning on this maybe in a month's time. Once these leaves have developed a bit, sent out some new shoots, I think I'll come back in and start doing some directional pruning on it. So there wasn't too much to do on this today. I wanted to update you and show you how it's going, and let's move on to that hemlock. This was one of my first trees. I picked it up from a local nursery. It was on the sale table, you know, sort of being thrown away almost. So I picked it up for almost nothing. And I didn't even know what it was. It took me ages to discover that I'm pretty sure now it's an eastern hemlock. And you don't always have to have an idea or a plan for a tree, but I've got one for this. And the idea in my mind is that it's going to look like one of those trees that you kind of see in the park, or you see when you go to a stately home and they've got these interesting trees from around the world. And this tree has a naturally weeping form, which suits that sort of, it's not a naturalistic old gnarly style, but I think it could be a really beautiful image in the future. When I first got this tree, for the first year, I always struggled with its health. And around this time last year, I decided to slip pot it into this much larger, well, it's a builder's bucket, surrounded it with bonsai soil. And ever since then, it's done really well. Next spring, my plan is to do a proper repot on it, take a look at the roots and get it into something more reasonable. In the long term, I do see this as the front of the tree. I like the way these two trunks splay off each way, and then there's a third trunk sort of sitting behind. So this is my preference, and the job for today really is to remove some of these lower branches here and just generally kind of develop the shape of the canopy. The biggest decision I need to make today is what to do with this here. I need to take a look, and it comes down on a nice branch that curves down. Do I want to completely remove that? Probably not. I think that would be a bit too much, and I can always go back and take more off in the future if I want. So what I think I'll do is go in and just, let's have a look. Interesting. I'm still looking for bifurcation where possible, cutting back to 2 branches. And I think this is a case where I can remove part of this longer length and leave these behind there, like that. So that kind of shortens that down a bit. This is still very long here. So again, I'm going to go in and say, can I cut that back? I think I can, just to almost, I forget what they call it, contour pruning, and just go in and just take that back like that. And then once I've done that, I can then go in and do more sort of individual pruning if I want. But for the time being, I like that. Perhaps that's still a little low, but I do want that cascading style. I do want it weeping down, but obviously I don't want it weeping down past the edge of the pot. The ground level of the pot is around here, so I do want a space, but that's probably about right. So that's good. I can then go in and do similar in here. Got a branch there that can be taken off on there. And this is great fun, this kind of work. Really enjoyable. Just kind of, after so much wiring and structural work and planting things in the ground and all that kind of stuff, it's nice to be able to go in on a tree that's by no means a finished bonsai, but it's at least one that I can go in and start shaping and styling, which is good. A bit like the Karate Kid, you know. You can almost make a cup of tea and just chill out and work your way around, just kind of styling it as good as you can. You're looking at the front there, so if I rotate it round so you're looking at the back, which is something like that, we've got quite a lot of height here. It's significantly higher than all the rest of the tree. So let's go back to the front there and perhaps look at taking some of this top section out here. Right, as we look at this branch then, the main trunk comes up, it divides into 2, which is good. This divides into 2, which is great. This one kind of comes up and is a little longer before it divides up here. And then as it divides, it's kind of dividing into 3. So I need to make a decision. I like this one here that weeps over to the side. I think that's good. And it's kind of this one it's this one here that seems to be too high, which is this branch here. So I'm going to go in and take that one off. That's good. It's taken some of the height away there, and it's improving this branch structure. And with it being a weeping form, these branches will probably be on display to a certain extent. So I like that that's got some nice form to it. With this top section here removed, I think that's a definite overall improvement in the shape of the canopy of this tree. It looks good. This here, it's hanging out quite a long way to the side. And although I do want it to be a wide-spreading tree, this particular lump here, which is kind of coming towards and to the side, it's a bit long, and if I rotate it like that, you can really see how far it's jutting out. So I need to find a place in here to cut this back. I've positioned the tree now so that this is the extension that's sticking out. And when I look inside here, what I can see is this is another of the trunks coming out, but it's got a really handy structure. It's got a lovely side branch coming here that kind of weeps down. And then as I get up to the top, this is the part that's extending too far. We've got lots of choices in here with plenty of branches. So what I think I can do is I can just take the longest, thickest main central leader out in there. And that significantly brings all of that back, but it maintains this wide sort of weeping form that I want. So again, that was just almost perfect. Okay, this is the section I just removed. So I'll rotate the tree back round to the front, which is somewhere in there. And you can see now that extension that came over too far is looking a lot more balanced. Yeah, I really prefer that a lot. And it's still not sculpted. And if anything, now coming behind the camera and looking, it still is overhanging probably a bit too much. So I think I need to get in here and take this back. Now, this one here is the low branch that I was just talking about that said's really nice, how it comes down and weeps. I'm just wondering if it weeps a bit too much. It's certainly too heavy. Anyway, I know that. And I do have a thinner branch at the back, so what I'm going to do is I'm not going to completely remove it, but I'm going to thin it out and just leave this small tuft there hanging. And that seems to sit a lot better. I think so anyway. Or should I just go for it and take that off? Is it needed? Because we do have, it's got a weeping form anyway, so lots of these branches are going to weep down in the future and kind of fill this space. And this one just feels like it's like just hanging down there a bit odd. It's going to go. I'm getting rid of it. Whoa. Look where it comes from there. And no, I can't. But I've got a bifurcation further up, so I can cut back to that. There. That's better. I've still got the lovely branch coming up and weeping down, but now it just weeps into this here, as opposed to that one on the end. And that looks a lot better. Yeah, I'm much happier with that. There's still quite a lot of low growth in here. I think I need to take some of that off. And it's beginning now to take on quite a nice form, I think. I don't like very, very formal, tightly pruned bonsai. It just does nothing for me. I like a kind of more loose, naturalistic style. Even though I do a lot of wiring and stuff, the wiring I do is obviously to develop the primary structure, and these trunks were all wired initially to get them in the positions they are. But once I've got that structure in place, the canopy and the foliage, I like to look, you know, I like it to look fairly untouched by human hand. A bit like Nigel Saunders in many ways, in that regard. You know, I don't want it to look very perfectly pruned and round, like a piece of topiary. You know, I like a tree that looks like a tree. And I think I'll leave that for the time being now. I've taken a fair bit of foliage off that. That can just sit back in the garden for a month or two. get some nice feed, get some nice water, and I may look at this again in the autumn. I've just looked from behind the camera, and this section here definitely still comes out a little bit far for my tastes. So it's a simple fix. I can just take some of these tips off, pruning back to nice bifurcations, which will give me good structure in the future. Yeah, that's better already. I like that. Yeah, that looks a lot better. Possibly even that lump at the top up there could do with just going back a bit. I've got a bit of a lump here, and I don't need to do any major branch pruning. I don't want to up here. But what I can do is I can go in and just take off that vertical branch that was kind of sticking up. There's another one here, and they seem to be, once they're happy in the soil, they seem to grow really quite vigorously, these trees. So there's no problem going in and taking a few branches off like that, and that just takes some of that off. I think I'm getting there with that now. It's beginning to look quite natural, and yeah, definitely. Just for those people with a bit of OCD, let's take those off. I brought you in close here for a bit of a wider angle on the tree. Hopefully this gives a kind of perspective that you'd be looking at a tree like this if you were in a nice park, you know, or outside a country house or something like that. And this is developing into one of my favourite bonsais. I really enjoy working on it, and I think as time goes on, this could become something quite special. Definitely a fun tree to work on, Matt. Really enjoyed it. And as I was just wrapping the video up, I had a knock on the door, and this thing arrived, and it's a tree. I can't open it up now because my brother's about to turn up and I'm going for a game of snooker. But when I get home, I'm going to do an unboxing video of this tree, which you'll be able to catch tomorrow. As always, thanks for joining me. Have a great day, and I'll see you soon.